I'm welcoming you here at the Status of Central Asian Civic Space Expert Analysis. This is a discussion panel which is organized under the support of Global Initiative in Innovation for Change in the framework of the Third Innovation Forum Festival of Central Asia. This festival is an annual event, and it was launched in December, and since then a lot of other events are following it up. And we hope that they're raising a lot of interest among you. And today we have 93 participants online, and we are also planning during 2 hours from 5 to 7 p.m. Almaty time to conduct this panel discussion. There are two tasks for our today's discussion. Task number one, and the first part of our discussion, panel discussion, is to analysis and to discuss the civic space of Central Asia from the point of view of the region and from the international perspective to acquire more knowledge and understanding about the prospects of civic society development. And the second part will be conducted in visual format or aquarium format, and maybe all the participants will have a possibility to discuss the idea of establishing the um, Center for Civic Space Development in Central Asia. And as I have already mentioned, the global initiative that is called Innovation for Change is supporting this initiative. It is being implemented in 7 regions of the world in the global south. And I would like to turn the floor now for welcoming speech to Muna Ben-Garga, who is the leader of Innovation for Change initiative. Muna is now in Washington, where it is 6 o'clock in the morning. Therefore, we would like to greet her and say good morning.
Good evening or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Jamila, for having me. I'm Munay, and I'm the global lead for Innovation for Change. It's a global initiative or a global network of 7 hubs around the world. We work and we partner together with civil society actors to defend and strengthen the civic space, to overcome restrictions, and to enhance the citizen participation in policies and in their day-to-day life, because we believe that civic space is really important, or open civic space is really important, for a better policies, for a better mechanisms to support citizens and to support civil society as a specific actor in this space. I really look forward for the conversation today. Our Central Asia hub, led by Argo, is one of our most active hub in terms of finding new ways and new tactics and solution to face the closing of civic space. So I welcome you, everyone, and I'm so honored to be among our Central Asian colleagues. Thank you and enjoy the panel today.
Thank you very much, Muna. And now we are starting our first part of our panel discussion. Colleagues, please mute your mics because you know that we are in Zoom. And now I would like to turn the floor for the first presentation during our panel discussion to Director of Kazakhstani International Bureau on Human Rights and Enhancement of Legality, Mr. Evgeny Zhovtis. Please, you are welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you, Jamila. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody who is listening to me during this panel discussion. And I would like to say a few main ideas. I would like probably to put forth 2 or 3 main theses for our future discussion, depending on my understanding of how the civic space is changing in Central Asia, because I, together with my human rights protection organization, have been working in this area for 30 years. And the first thesis is that the civic space in Central Asia fully depends on the political context, on the dynamics of the political processes in the countries of this region. And the majority of them are authoritarian, except for Kyrgyzstan, and because they're headed by the post-Soviet, post-communist elites, who are the main beneficiaries of the economic transition of 90s, the transition from the Soviet planned centralized economy to the modern economy without private property. And the beneficiaries not always were legitimate and legal. And this is the reason for which these elites are actually guided by these principles when they are defining the policies for the civil societies. For example, in Uzbekistan, it is pure authoritarianism, and in Kazakhstan, it is authoritarian regime with some elements of democracy. In Kyrgyzstan, there is no political opposition. The political opposition does not exist in the representation of the local parties, and it is impossible to establish them and to get them registered. There are mass media, but the mass media are not independent, especially TV and radio. There is no political pluralism and space for political competition. There is constitution. There are different legislative frameworks, especially for the NGOs and the SCOs, but it is not aiming at the development of civil society, whereas their main aim is to preserve their power and control. And there is no rule of law. And there is a rule by law. That is to say, when when they are ruling the countries with the help of the laws. And this is the reason for which there is no space for independent mass media and journalism. Whereas the freedom of speech is actually ratified by all the countries of the region, whereas the development of a strong civil society is one of the main indexes in the democratic development, which, in addition to the human rights preservation and the rule of law, is one of the main responsibility of all these countries in our region vis-a-vis OSCE. And actually, we are now just describing the political system of our organizations, including the description of various social norms, institutions, organizations, horizontal and vertical interactions. And many researchers even understand the um, accumulation of religious, family, interethnic, religious, and other relationships, and self-expression of free individuals and other social structures who are protecting themselves from direct interference by the government, and which are requiring autonomy. And when they are separated from the government, they are also separated from business. But nevertheless, being one of the part of this tripartite system, very well developed civil society is an inseparable part of efficient management with the control functions by the government. What does it mean? There are several features. First of all, we have to identify the features, the characteristics. It is uh, First of all, it is civil society, and it's not just society, it is civil society, because we all are citizens of our societies. But there is also some specifics, because the civil society is something different than just being a citizen with the passport. And there are some other definitions, such as, for example, horizontal ties, self-expression, independence from the government, which are protecting ourselves from the direct interference by the government. And critical thinking is one of the prerequisites for civil society development. Ubi dubium ibi libertum, where liberty and freedom is where there is some doubt. But unfortunately, the societies of our Central Asian region are societies, but they are not yet civil societies, because they are still preserving the paternalistic moods, the certainty that all the problems will have to be resolved by the government, and at the same time, the syndrome of helplessness, because if the government does not resolve the problems, it will not be possible to get any result from the government. There is no culture of political relationships, and it's also the attitude to NGOs as to something alien and conspirology, which has actually flooded all social media and social civil society that are dealing with education, with literacy, they still keep working, and the fundamental little steps have already been done along these lines in all the countries of the regions. And based on these basic prerequisites, we can evaluate the status of the legislation on NGOs, or, for example, the interrelationship between the government and the civil society. Unfortunately, the legislation of Kazakhstan is based on prevalence of the interests of the government over civil society. And such laws contain a great number of various bureaucratic requirements and a lot of restrictions. And here we have a very heavy bureaucratic and discriminatory procedures when a legal entity, for example, would like to get its status as compared to the acquiring of the legal entity status by the businesses. There are some authorized committees, such as, for example, the Ministry of Information, uh, uh, which has a specific committee, and they have some very strange, very ununderstandable provisions which are related to more than 20 articles in the criminal code. And this is potentially very dangerous. And then we are facing a lot of attempts to foreign agents and other things which are very similar in Russia. Therefore, this is something that requires some cardinal reform. So this is my analysis of the current situation of the civic space. Do we have any civil societies in our region? Yes, we do have some civil societies with their traditions, transformations, relationships, pros and cons. But whether or not the this um, term of civil society, does it play a very significant role in our societies? I doubt it greatly, and I believe that there is no other alternative to the of civil society if our governments, if our peoples would like to be competitive, efficient, and capable to flexibly react to various challenges. And this is putting forth some new requirements to the society, and it can be characterized as coercing to the development of civil society and the expansion of what we usually call civic space. And this should be a main task of and the main aim of the governments in our region. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Evgeny Alexandrovich. I believe that the main idea of our discussion is that probably we will listen to three presentations and then we will start Q&A session. Please, the next presentation will be made by the head of the Department of the Regional and Analytical Research of the National Institute of Defense, Mr. Erika Marat. Please, the floor is yours, Erika. Yes, good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I made my presentation in English, but I think that it will be much better if I will make it in Russian, because my understanding is that the majority of the participants today are Russian speakers. And I cannot demonstrate, I cannot share my screen. Okay, no problem. It is a great honor for me to be a speaker at the same platform where Evgeny Zhovtis is doing the presentation, because for me, Evgeny Zhovtis is an example of bravery in his principal standpoint and his activism. I would like maybe to say a few words about some optimistic tendencies in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan in particular, because these two countries are very familiar to me. Myself, I'm from Bishkek, but very often I visit Kazakhstan and I try to study and understand, analyze what's happening there. In Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, there are some activism that is taking place everywhere in private space. And the best examples that I can give you are related to pandemic, when the government of Kyrgyzstan was literally um, depressed by the countermeasures against the pandemic. And in June and July, there were two awful months when all the hospitals were overflooded with patients. And then the civil society activists have got together, and they started providing to medical staff the PPEs and food, drinks, etc. So everything was taking place in the private environment, in private space. But at the same time, we see that there are a lot of movements in civic space as well. And one of the brilliant examples are the protests, both in Kazakhstan last year and Kyrgyzstan last year. But even now, we see that in such cities as Tashkent, for example, where there are not so many spontaneous civic activism, but we are witnessing how they are organizing, for example, jazz concerts. And this is a kind of claim of the citizens, or the um, request of the citizens for establishment of their civic space. And these processes are taking place in the region, and I'm hoping that they will expand and grow. And just like Mr. Zhovtis, I would also like to note three main pieces. I would like to say that in Central Asia, just like in post-Soviet space in general, and maybe in some other parts of the world, uh, what is happening during the last several years. I would like to know that the first tendency is that the civil activists in Central Asia, whom I know through the interviews that were conducted with the activists in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, who are seeking some civic solidarity based on the international cooperation. And the second point that I would like to stress is what we actually see is that there is a kind of rollback of the civil society as a form of NGOs. And this is very notable in Kyrgyzstan, but elsewhere in post-Soviet space, when the civil societies used to act in the form of NGOs supported by various donor organizations, and NGOs that depend on international support, international aid. They're very often criticized that it's a kind of civil profession, and these people are not so much let's say, trying to resolve social or political or any other problems. And even though there are a lot of activists from NGOs that do a lot for their societies, but it's a kind of work from 9 o'clock in the morning until 5 p.m. And I would like to conclude by stating that yes, of course, a lot needs to be done to make sure that the civil activists will greatly contribute to the policies of their countries, and there is still a huge gap between what the citizens would like to have and what the government believes expedient. But nevertheless, and these tendencies which are taking place right now in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, and to a certain extent in other Central Asian countries, they force the government to think and to change sometimes its own decisions, even though they do not recognize it, but they're changing their political decisions, making sure that new rights, new criticism is not going to be instigated. Therefore, I'm still keeping to be an optimist. Thank you very much, Erika, for a very nice insight on the realities taking place in post-Soviet space, especially during pandemic, which are also associated with the changes in the civil society. And we have one more speaker, Sara Torres. She is working in the Partnership for Development Effectiveness in Asia. Sarah, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, good evening from Manila. So as mentioned, I'm Sarah Torres from CPDE, or the CSO Partnership for Development Effectiveness. So before I share my screen, I actually appreciate and thank you for the two previous speakers, because this proves how similar, no, the landscape of civil society all throughout the world. So even in Southeast Asia and South Asia, we experience similar repression. And in fact, I'll be that's part of my speech, no, but maybe I'll just run through them in a little while quickly, since our two speakers have already shared some of those. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Okay, so today I'll be talking about how CSOs power through the shrinking of civic spaces, and how our work at the CPDE figures in to support and unite CSOs from the national to the global level. So CPDE is a platform that unites civil society organizations from around the world on the issue of effective development cooperation. We work in 117 countries, and our members come from 7 regions and 8 major sectors. So in particular, our members in Central Asia, which our goal is one of, they're engaged in different areas of CPDE's work. So as you can see in the photos, we engage from capacity development initiatives to campaigns and mobilizations, from research and monitoring to policy dialogue. So um, different members have different approaches, but we are united toward um, poverty reduction, decreasing the gap of inequality, no, and also evidencing development effectiveness in the region, particularly to us in Asia Pacific. So, yeah, so as I mentioned, we strive for a more effective development, the kind that truly responds to poverty and inequality. So we promote this so-called human rights-based approach or framework to development. We uphold accountability and development cooperation, and build the capacity of CSOs to engage in various advocacy arenas. So what we mean by development cooperation is that whole gamut of the aid architecture, no, civil society, private sector intervention, the corporate capture of development. So we have research in these areas, and we also try to engage in dialogue with different development actors. Um, okay, so of course, this is not an easy task. When you're trying to talk to different um, sectors and groups from the developing countries and also from those donor countries. No? So in the process, CSOs experience, as I've mentioned, different forms of repression and also similar. No? So the first speaker already mentioned this one in terms of the compliance to regulatory authorities. So this is prevalent in the Philippines, for example, where I come from. CSOs are burdened with a long list of requirements just to prove that they are legal and that they are organized. So, however, the problem with this is that there are so many grassroots organizations which do not have the capacity and the funds yet to comply with this long list of requirements. No? And these hinder them from being recognized and hinder them from actually participating in dialogues related to the Sustainable Development Goals, for instance, or dialogues with the Asian Development Bank or the World Bank um, in terms of development projects that hinder or hamper their development. And second, there's political repression. I've also heard this from the previous speakers. Um, so many leaders and activists were illegally jailed. They're accused with trumped up charges and non-bailable cases. Impacts of its external debt, private sector intervention in development, and human rights violations, specifically those by the military. So in the Philippines, perhaps you've heard about how our government has been rampant, no, in spreading this information. No? So they call it state propaganda, just to dismiss CSO's statements and even evidence-based research. Okay. The shrinking of civic space and the lack of enabling environment for CSOs are very much evident in authoritarian government's response to COVID-19. So this is just an example from one of our members, Nashvik, on their recent research on evidencing development effectiveness in Kyrgyzstan's COVID-19 response. So I'm assuming in our own countries, in our own organizations. So there's obviously a transparent and the lack of transparent and accessible information from government agencies. In the Philippines, our data actually is, you can call it manipulated because we have so much backlog in data, and so the data reported by news organizations and by the government are not updated every day. And this gives an impression that there's no increase in the cases and a decrease in the recovery, because the data is not updated. The second is how unprepared our governments are to respond to the challenges and the consequences of the pandemic. So that's very very obvious with how the government responded to certain sectors, to the challenges of certain sectors. For example, contractual workers, they don't have their savings, but the government's response, there is no enough in the healthcare system. Many of us have private healthcare systems, and this impedes us from accessing quality healthcare because to get sick is very expensive. How much more to get a virus in this pandemic now? And third is the restriction of movement, and this also and cases have been reported that because of restriction in movement, CSOs weren't really able to respond immediately. Some of them were actually stopped by some police or military for checkpoints, and not allowed to go to the communities where they're supposed to go to. So in a more national level, in terms of financing, so to combat the COVID-19, the Kyrgyz Republic turned to IFI for, of course, aid. So as of August 2020, Nashvik reported that $773 million of aid has been provided by the World Bank, the ADB, and other IFIs to the country. And however, we have to note that 77% of this is in the form of loans, and around $11 million is directed toward private sector support, while only $3.3 million is for the health sector. And that is not just in Kyrgyzstan. A lot of countries, especially in the global south, face this kind of challenge. And so CSOs expressing dissatisfaction over the lack of action of the Kyrgyz Republic are persecuted. Some were summoned by interrogation, but instead of cowering, CSOs have learned that such response is afraid of its people. So we've also experienced this in different countries which have launched protest actions amidst the pandemic, and realized that with a number, with a number of people showing dissent, the militarist response of any government just means they're afraid of their own people, of their voters. So, but despite of this persecution, CSOs remain solid, and they're even more committed to fight for a just cause. So several organizations mobilize the people to donate and volunteer. We've seen solidarity within and among communities, within and among regions. Others launched sign-on campaigns, conducted educational discussions and webinars, and monitored COVID-19 financing-related data to be able to engage with the national government better. So this is actually one of our works at CPDE. We, as I've mentioned earlier, that research from Nashvik on evidencing development effectiveness is one of our projects, and it was It's a global project actually. So Kyrgyzstan is just one of the many countries studies for that specific project. There's also from India, from the Philippines, and several from Latin America and Africa. Soon, all these country studies will be published and a global webinar will be conducted. So I can send Jamila the link of this webinar so you can also join and see how other countries are faring in terms of the COVID-19 response. And so these materials that CPDE is producing will be useful to assert the necessity of incorporating development effectiveness principles. So when we say DE principles, we mean this one on the left. First is democratic ownership. Second is focus on results. Third, inclusive partnerships. And the last is transparency and mutual accountability. So this is already internationally recognized, but the problem is that still many donor governments are not able to fully commit to these principles. So we realize that all the more now, in responding to COVID-19, it is important to really push for a sustainable development that is human rights based and people centered. And when we say human rights based, we mean that an architecture is based on solidarity and mutuality, on people's sovereignty, on inclusiveness and democratization of decision making, and on accountable duty bearers. So to amplify our calls, all of these calls, and that of our members, we engage in international arenas, such as the GPEDC, or the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation. CPDE is the representative of civil society in that arena. We also engage at the OECD DAC, or the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Assistance Committee. And lastly, the United Nations. So while we are recognized as development partners in these arenas, we are yet to be heard because we are currently, we're just listened to, we're just consulted with, but how much of our statements and of our dialogues have figured in their statements, or in their policies, and most especially in their practices. And that's why this asserts the importance of our collective and our democratic participation on issues that concern us and our community. And whenever necessary, we take our calls to the streets, because a people united will never be defeated. So I really love this line because it shows that together, we can do something. Together, we are united, we are collective, and thus the people, the powers will be more afraid of its people and actually do something. So let's soldier on, and please know that Central Asia, you are not alone, because there are a lot of people's movements all over the world, in the Philippines, in Indonesia, in Hong Kong, in Thailand, and in Lebanon, for instance. So I hope all these people's movements you've seen on your media, on international media, or on social media. I hope they went viral, so that we take inspiration from how these movements have organized themselves and how they're continuing to soldier on in this stuff. So we are in solidarity with you, and of course we want to have a bigger family. So for more information on our advocacy, on how we can partner, how we can collaborate further, you can visit our website at csopartnership.org. So that's all from my end. Thank you.
Благодарю, Сара. Благодарю всех, кто выступил.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much, everybody who made presentations and talked about your own main ideas about the development of civic space. And I see that the discussion has already started in the chat, because there is a question, for example, about the about the shrinking of the civic space during pandemic. Many people believe that the civic space has made several steps back, and what civil society needs to do, how to overcome these problems, what will predetermine the civic activity, only the meetings, or there are also some self-organized organizations, and business is also included. I would like to ask Evgeny Alexandrovich and Erika about the steps that civil society needs to take during the pandemic and post-pandemic period. Thank you very much. I would like to be very short. I would like to follow up on what Sarah has mentioned, because from Central Asia during a couple of years, three organizations are already members of Forum Asia on the development and human rights. Therefore, solidarity of Central Asia with Southeast Asia and Southern Asia is only growing, and we are networking, we are establishing some new relationships, and the process is in progress. Secondly, I would also like to follow up on what Erika has mentioned, because during the last 2 or 3 years, there is growing activity among the youngsters, among the youth, including the political area and near-political area. And there is one detail that I would like to draw your attention to, is a temporal parameter, because I've been acting in this particular area for 30 years already, and I remember the organizations at the beginning of 90s that was very proactive at that time, but then it was it did not enhance, and it was transformed into an NGO, and this is the reason for which what is happening right now, kind of individual civil activity keeps expanding. What civil society needs to do, I think that you can take a look at it, because we have already made two reports on COVID-19 and the global situation, what rights COVID-19 affected greatly. But I believe that the main point here is that the civil society really needs, or shall, maybe I will sound a little bit high flown, but the civil society should turn from the object to the subject of political management. I think that there is more or less satisfactory framework law, but we will have to refine its T's and C's. And we have to enhance, especially the procedures and the institutional participation of the civil society in decision-making process and in drafting efficient decisions. And I would like to reiterate again on the meetings. You know, the meetings and demonstrations, I think that it's just a form of self-expression. And, you know, after the revolution, we still have a kind of stereotyped opinion that a demonstration or a meeting is the way to change something in the government. Not at all. It's just a way of expressing your opinion. And this environment for civil activism is becoming very favorable, because more and more people get to realize that it is impossible to resolve or address social problems or to get justice. Just remember the movement in Kazakhstan against the murder of a very renounced skate figure. But yes, there are some such separate examples. For example, the mortgage very often they are associated with their attempt to resolve some practical problems. However, these practical problems of people are associated with systemic problems. Therefore, there is an issue of consolidation and understanding of this particular aspect will become a way not to shrink these frames, these spaces, but to expand them. And from the very beginning, just as a wrap up, I would like to say that when a lot depends on political context, on political elite, authoritarian political elite, you understand that you are in a very narrow political corridor. And this is one of the biggest problems. Erica, would you like to add a couple of words? Yes, I fully agree with what has just been mentioned by our colleagues, and with regard to the demonstrations and riots. Yeah, of course, I do agree with you by 100% that it's a way of self-expression. And the protests very often uh, represent a result of a lack of any other ways of communication, because the parliaments do not work, and the executive power representatives do not hear the people. This is the reason for which people try to act in civic space. But at the same time, it's another possibility to talk about very important political topics, so that the public will start discussing these topics, and will also consider the government through the prism of all these problems. So these are really very important points. Another cup of tea is how to act, because protests and riots is just the beginning of how we can get the public involved into this process. But I believe that if you take, for example, Ukraine, or if you take Georgia, where the civil society is multifaceted, and they are using a lot of various tactics. They are composed of different and numerous organizations. They also have displayed and manifested a lot of individual activism, for example, among the expert community, among the lawyers. And I think that for the expert community of Central Asia, it is essentially important to start finding some common points with pretty concrete people, with some selected bureaucrats in the government. And this is an area where we need to find compromise, but at the same time, we have to try to penetrate into the government machine and trying to change it from the inside. Therefore, we have to expand our arsenal, and this is what is happening already right now. And we have to try to find like-minded people, those people who will agree with you, will take your standpoint, because in the government, no matter how much the government depends on the um, president, we really have to find some new corridors to be able to bring our points of view to big politics. Thank you very much, Erica. And we have one more question. Do you believe that online activism being a new form of the manifestation of civic society in the world? If yes, then how will you evaluate such online civic society in Kazakhstan, and the extent to which such new IT technologies are compatible with this theory of civil society? Yes, I would like also to complement it with another question which we received in Facebook, because the users are wondering, in addition to online enumerated forums, people are wondering, how do you take the petitions? Do you think that it's a kind of sofa activism, or you believe that it will have some future? Yes, thank you. Yeah, therefore we have the same questions about online forms of civil activism. Well, now maybe I will start. I would like to entertain the second question right away, because it actually is the continuation of another question that we received in chat. Online petitions and public hearings, public expertise, public monitoring, and even the scrutiny of the legislation and interaction with the government in various platforms should be considered to be public activism, and you should not call it a kind of sofa activism, because very often you achieve sitting on a sofa, not so much on a sofa, but maybe sitting on a chair in front of your PC. Yeah, there are some procedures that might be even more efficient. The more they will be more efficient, the more they will be creating some potential. As to online activism, it goes without saying that internet is a huge platform that has already contributed greatly to link people between each other. And therefore, if you know, and if you remember, according to the modern understanding of the meetings, online meetings are also protected by Article number 21 of the Convention, just like uh, a physical meeting. And I would like to draw your attention to one more thing, but you know that the internet has a lot of cons and pros, because online activism sometimes causes problems, because these can be very well understood by the, let's put it this way, the enemies of this movement, of this process, because there are a lot of provocators, there is a lot of misinformation, there is trolling, and of course fake news are very easily spread, and various conspirological theories are spread in the internet as well, and therefore it actually is influencing a lot. Yes, when a group is closed, it might be effective, but as soon as it starts working openly, then it's very difficult. It will be very difficult for it to counteroppose an avalanche of misinformation. And it's very difficult to use the right filter of opinions and news. And I would say that the civic activism online really is facing a lot of serious challenges and problems, which we will have to resolve somehow. Thank you. Erika, yeah, I see that you would like to say a few words as well. Yeah, I do agree with it, but maybe one more speaker. Sarah, would you like to say anything about the extent to which social media and public hearings or riots influence on civic society?
Yes. Um, in terms of social media, we know that there's already a lot of literature where it has used, and there have been reports when it has influenced some public perception, so some public laws, or if not laws, bills, no, specifically in Southeast Asia or in South Asia. But the important thing is we must go out, we must go offline, right? So even if we try to advocate and campaign online, we exhaust all these means, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, different to mobilize, we need to organize, actually bring change offline. No? Well, change may be a very, very big word, but at least influence the policy and practice of those that of policymakers, no, at least. And then there's a second point: petitions and monitoring. No? So these are also things that we at CPDE and our members work on. These are some of us, if not most of us, these are their main area of work. And for instance, this whole development effectiveness principle in development, this has been a reform from the civil society themselves. So previously, it was just called aid effectiveness. But with how civil society asserted and participated in policy reforms and dialogues, we were able to influence policymakers to turn it into a development effectiveness and give a different meaning in terms of ownership and inclusive partnerships and focus on results, etc. But of course, the work is not yet done, no, because there are still limitations, and that's why we're still here continuing this work, no, and this advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe the last question is related to the various groups or councils. How can we make them more efficient? I would say that this forum is more intended for dialogue, but maybe it's a banal question, but I think that your answers might be very interesting. Since I was participating in a lot of such platforms and even structures, for example, to the National Council, I was providing my advice on how to prevent tortures, to make sure that these structures, they will never become efficient just all of a sudden, because their form is not predetermined, is not predetermining their effectiveness. For example, I stopped my membership in the public council, which is analyzing the efficiency of public meetings, because it's no longer interesting, and I understand that they will never get any beneficial results, because everything depends on the people, the members of such structures, because the more activists will become their members with an absolutely clear civil standpoint, and they will be ready and capable to professionally defend their own standpoint, the better will be the result of such organization, because you need to have exactly the same potential as the government authority to be able to oppose the government authority. And you need to be able to use various arguments and to be pretty skilled. And for this, you need to be a professional politician, even under the conditions of authoritarian political system in which we exist. I think that the importance of arguments and articulation of messages cannot be underestimated. But of course, it is very important to form the ideas, the messages, and political aims in a very particular way, and to do it in a convincing manner. And I believe that what is also very relevant for the civil society is to understand that some changes are very rapid, whereas some changes take place very, very slowly. And I believe that there is a very good example on preventive mechanisms, because I think that if you take a look at the American examples, for example, what is taking place very slowly is the rollback from the existing violent practices. I think that it is a very slow change for ministries, for agencies, and even for the bureaucrats. This is the reason for which such slow and gradual changes will really cause some frustration in the civil society. But if it is a fundamental change which is causing the change in the procedures, it's really a huge advantage and benefit for civil society. And I would like also to mention that very rapid changes usually take place during serious situations. Very often those are situations associated with violence, such as, for example, the murder of a famous figure skater in Kazakhstan. And there was a very good chance for us to press on the government. In Kyrgyzstan, there were very similar examples. Situational development. What is really important is that when the public at large will pay a lot of attention to a concrete political or public problem, then the civil society will have a window of opportunity for press on the government, and do it in a in an efficient way, requiring accelerated changes in the government. I'm sorry for my clumsy Russian. No, it's great. Thank you very much, Erica. Sarah, maybe just a couple of words on on the attitude to various advisory boards or councils and how they influence on the civil society.
So, well, at least in CPDE, we really do try to involve as many development actors as possible, not just so we also know the landscape of where we're working at, no. But of course, when you forge alliances, you also try to map out and strategize who are the actors that you are most likely to ally with your advocacy and which actors are least likely. And in our experience, councils of CSOs or of academics or media, these are most likely to be aligned with our advocacy. But when we say business advisory, for instance, well, that's a different, you need a different strategy altogether. But we are not, of course, close, no? In fact, this year, actually beginning next year, it is in our plan to really reach out to MSME, for instance, the micro, small, medium enterprises, and see how, while they're profit-oriented, how do their social enterprise aspects, so how can we collaborate and partner toward sustainable development? So we're seeing this and we're dipping our toes in this, and we'll see what the outcomes would be. So again, it's just really a matter of trying to engage and really dialogue with different actors, but not forgetting that as a civil society, you always need to stand your ground, and the position is always with the communities, of course. Thank you.
Благодарю. И, конечно, мы...
Thank you. And indeed, one of the issues that is noted in our chat now, undoubtedly, it is very important to keep on increasing the potential of NGOs because actually we are working on the quality of the messages and statements that the civil society activists are trying to pass across. And therefore, on behalf of the organization of Innovation for Change, on behalf of ARCOR, I would like to thank all the speakers of our panel discussion, Evgeny Alexandrovich, Sarah, and Erica, and I would like to wish you all the best of success, and thank you very much. And we had more than 110 participants. This is the reason for which I believe the discussion turned out to be very interesting. Thanks a lot. Now we are passing over to the second part of our panel discussion, and this part is dedicated to the establishment and development of the analytical center in Central Asia, which is being developed by various organizations from 5 ex-USSR countries, as well as Mongolia and Afghanistan. And for the presentation of the main presentation, I would like Sarah to share her screen, and I would like to turn the floor to my colleague from Mongolia, Mr. Batsugan Dahanbar, who is the consultant of the Independent Institute of Mongolia, IRIM, and who is the board member of the Global Initiative Innovation for Change. Batsugar, please.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So, as Jamila said, I'll be presenting you guys our idea to develop Central Asian think tank. So, can you guys all see my screen? So I'll be presenting a small presentation.
Not yet. Not yet. The presentation is not on the screen.
Kick off today's discussion and presentation about the Central Asian think tank from where it has started, where the idea come from. To do that, I'll be introducing really shortly about the Innovation for Change Network and its Central Asia Hub. Next slide, please. Okay. Innovation for Change Network has started its activities from 2015, and it's a network of people and organizations from across the different sectors and different geographical areas to defend the civic space, to act in solidarity, and also to stand up different challenges for the civic space and fundamental freedom rights, such as legal environments, digital surveillance and monitoring, and etc. And also, it's aimed to equip and inspire civil society actors with different ideas, methods, tools, and technologies from across the world to enhance and contribute, enhance civil society contribution to the development challenges and development programs in each region and every country that has participating. And also, in order to do that, we conduct advocacy and capacity building activities, research, network building, trainings, help our members to fundraise, and also providing small grants to implement their ideas in different sectors. And generally, Innovation for Change Network is a global South network with the regional hubs in 7 different regions, such as Africa, Central Asia, East Asia, South Asia, Pacific, and so on. So our Central Asian hub has representation in 7 countries. So it's Central Asian 5 countries and plus Afghanistan and Mongolia. So far, so our regional hub started its activities from 2017 and conducting active actions and activities for several years now, and we have a couple hundred active participants and members who are participating in different events and promoting their innovation and their solution to the challenges that we face as a region. Next slide, please. So, and recently, earlier this year, we have updated our strategy as a Central Asian hub. And of course, there are several more things, more strategies and goals and objectives has been included in our strategy. But in relation to the topic that we are discussing now, which is think tank, there are 2 main strategic objectives that is in relation to this. So first thing is we want to create a regional think tank for the civil society in order to promote and equip civil society with their own research and evidence base to promote their activities and effectively contribute to the decision making as a effective actor. Also, we want to create a community of experts who could also build the capacity and provide technical assistance to the civil society organizations, activists, and members. Also, we want that this think tank plays a role as a platform to apply these research findings and outputs to create practical solutions to those problems. And therefore, we want to become a can-do tank from a think tank perspective. Also, the think tank, it's not a isolated structure. We want the think tank to be a platform for various cooperations within the sectors, across the sectors. And also, we, in order to think tank to be sustainable, we want to also contribute to the general universal knowledge and research base in our region. And also a second goal related to that is that our Central Asian hub and Central Asian civil societies need to more effectively and more actively contribute to the sustainable development and development agenda in our region. In order to do that, there is a need for increased advocacy, increased participation, engagement, and also cooperation and partnerships. So that's how where it has started. And please to the next slide. And why it is really important. So for this past few years of actions and our implementation of several different projects and activities, we noticed that civil society organizations and actors in our region lack in terms of their own research and analysis and knowledge base. So this really inhibits and challenges them to proactively address and respond to the current and future civic space and development challenges in their respective areas of operation. Also, the limited capacity in general for the CSOs creates barriers for them to participate in the development discussion at national, regional, and global levels. That's why civil society organizations in our region more like acting or operating like opposition or supervision player rather than actor in discussion and implementation of different development agendas at this point. So in order to fill that gap and to enable civil societies to engage in different development discussions and decision makings, also in general to broaden and defend the civic space and legal environment in our region, there is a need for intermediary player or intermediary organization to bring different actors and civil society organizations, bring them together to respond to the challenges in solidarity and to cohesively coordinate their interactions and programs. So next slide, please. So we have started this discussion of creating think tank from spring this year, and we discussed within different groups and different audiences whether it's a really needed player in our region. So there were a lot of questions about how it's different from existing think tanks or existing research institutions. Are we reinventing a wheel or so? So we think about that a lot. So there are a lot of public institutions providing research and analysis insight to the government actors. There are a lot of private research institutions who are providing different research services for international development institutions and so on. And also there are academic institutions and international regional institutions as well. But what Innovation for Change Central Asia think tank is different from them is that it's ownership. So it's owned by the civil society organizations and civil society actors. But by this, we don't mean that it will be exclusive to the other stakeholders and other players in the region. No, it will be open to all different players and all different actors who care about civil society, civic space, and who care about development outcomes and development results in the region. So it will also have a collective ownership of these different actors to respond cohesively to our common challenges as well. And also, second thing, as I mentioned previously, we think that we are aiming this think tank to become a platform rather than a sole player, to become a platform for different stakeholders from across the different sectors and geographical areas to come together to learn from each other, and also to come up with the mutual and collaborative evidence base, and as well as solutions for that. And of course, the Can-Do tank, from the perspective of Can-Do tank, we think that this platform, this think tank, also should play a huge role in to develop a collective response to the development challenges. So saying that we think that we are not duplicating or competing with any other think tanks or research institutions. Rather than that, we are filling the gap and enabling a collaborative environment for these different institutions to come together to respond to these gap areas, as we think it is. So next slide, please. So saying all that above, we set our vision as the Innovation for Change Central Asia think tank would become a Can-Do tank through civil society in Central Asia, with the partnership without borders. By that we mean any organizations, any individuals from any sectors and any geographical areas could come together to jointly conduct research, formulate the policy, actions and responses, develop advocacies, and create and implement solutions. And doing that, contribute to the general universal knowledge base on action-based research and solutions. So this is how we see the think tank should become. Okay, next. So what exactly the Innovation for Change Central Asia think tank should become? As we said, the first thing is it's a platform. It's not a conventional think tank or conventional institution structure or activities. But we will do capacity building, research, advocacy, and creation of innovation and solutions, and thus creating and maintaining knowledge hub in our Central Asian region. Our approach to conduct these activities is that rather than think tank itself doing a research, doing an advocacy, creating a solution, we enable our members and our partners to cooperatively to do that. Also, related to that, our management approach would be decentralized. It's an environment for different groups, different working groups to be created to respond to the different areas and different questions and different problems. And also, we will apply adaptive management approach, which means that there won't be one solution, one design, or one structure for everything. Different groups could act in different ways in different process. For example, in the next slide would be showing our 3 different research areas. So all research areas could have different designs and different processes and different structures. So we will be prototyping different approaches to respond in the different areas and different sectors, which could also show us what kind of collaborative approach would be more efficient in our region and in this time. Next slide, please. So our goals, I think it could be a bit repetitive to what I have said before, but just to sum up, what we want to achieve is that we want to produce, develop and produce and disseminate research outputs and products which will be identified by our regional members, partners all together. So the research agenda of the think tank won't be dictated by someone or some group of people. It will respond to the needs of our civil society organizations, actors, and different partners from different levels. And also, the think tank wants to enable civil society to formulate evidence-based advocacy options. So we want our civil society members and actors to engage actively and effectively engage in the decision-making process with their research products and findings, as well as to produce solutions and innovative approach to tackle these problems and pressing issues in our region. And also the more general mission or goal of think tank is to become to develop and develop a partnership to do all these previously mentioned activities with the CSOs, research institutions, businesses, and private sectors and public sectors, international development institutions, and etc. Okay, next slide, please. And what we are going to do. So, so far, our working group on the Central Asian think tank identified several starting points or starting areas of research. So as we know, in our region, we are having a problem with the civic space and fundamental freedom rights, as our speakers previously mentioned. It's also related to our social development level transition, social, political, and economic transitions, as well as incoming challenges in the global level in perspective of anti-money laundering, financing terrorism, and national security, and etc. There are different challenges coming up. So one of the key research areas that we want to include for the think tank activities would be enabling environment for civil society in Central Asia. And second thing, we want that civil society actors and civil society organizations would be strengthened and equipped by current technological advancements. So we also want to operate in area of social innovation and innovation potentials of civil society in Central Asia. The third one is of impact of international investment and in the greater Central Asian region, where we want to study and monitor the impact and results of international investments and empower civil society organizations to engage in the discussions and decision makings in terms of international investment and development initiatives and projects. Next slide. Okay, thanks. So the research areas will be discussed in detail, I think, in tomorrow's discussion, and you could also access the white papers of each research area from the link that was in the presentation. I think the presentation can be shared among the participants. So the last question is who will be doing the research and all these activities? So I created this matrix, sample matrix of actors and activities within the think tank. So this matrix could lot different on every project or every research that the think tank will be conducting. But in general, we want to be a platform for the engagement of members and civil society organizations with the expert community in certain areas. We want to bring them together, and so in every activity. So it's starting with the research agenda. So coming up and developing what kind of research and research does we need. So we want that every actors, our partners from public institutions, from businesses, from governments, and from different sectors, and also experts in key research areas. Also, Innovation for Change Central Asia Hub as a think tank and civil society members of our network come together to identify research agenda and research needs that, at this point. And we also want to build the capacity of our members to conduct the research. So they could come expert communities to provide capacity building activities, and also our partners could also engage in it. So, and actually conduct the members with the technical assistance from different partners could carry out the research activities and analysis. Of course, we are inviting different stakeholders and partners to maintain or the quality of all the outputs of think tank, and cooperatively create solution and innovation to address this challenge. And at the end, we also want this research outputs to be advocated and disseminated at the regional and at least the national level. So as a think tank, as a partners, we all can promote the common ideas and common goals based on the advocacy and dissemination. So like at the end, we want this think tank to become a regional platform for all of us to come together to respond to our common challenges and also to learn from each other.
Thank you, Batsugar. It's very interesting presentation. This work organized by the tank working group, regional working group, during the last 3 months. And I would like to provide the floor to Philippe to organize the second part of our panel discussion. Филипп является международным консультантом в организационном развитии.
Philip is an international consultant for development. He is very familiar with the Central Asian region, and he's been participating in this organization for the think tank. Now, the floor is yours, Philip, please. Thank you very much, Jamila. You have already introduced me. I would like to say that I've been working in Innovation for Change since 2016, and it's a great pleasure for me to realize that this initiative is becoming very practical, and I would like to use the rest of the time to get your feedback, your comments, and your opinions. Let us now get down to business. I would like to invite you to a very short discussion so that you will be able to share your impressions about our think tank project. In general, I'm very much interested to hear from you what will be the topics of the research that you would like us to conduct, what this research should be guided by, and how we can devise guidelines very fast so that everybody will be able to very actively participate in this discussion. We will switch to a different format, which is called fishbowl. We mentioned it very briefly at the very beginning. Therefore, during 1 minute, I'm going to tell you how it will be organized. And the principle here is that there are several pretty simple rules that you have to follow. Firstly, it is very important to turn off your video. Please switch to gallery mode, and you can right-click on any participant, and from the menu you will be able to choose. Then the discussion will take place in the following way. You can imagine that there is a limited number of members. There are only 6 people whom you will be able to see at the same time. And if you want to say something, you can simply join the discussion. And for this, you only need to unmute your mic and to turn on your camera. If you see that there are 6 people who have already turned on their videos, their cameras, you will have to wait a little bit. If for whichever reason your camera doesn't work, you just write in chat your comments or your questions, and we will be able to process it as soon as the space is available, because there will be a lot of speakers. Please, after your comment, turn off your video to free the space for other users. So the principles are very simple to follow. And I would like to demonstrate these principles on the screen behind me. So you see it in both languages. And there is also an idea to invite several people for comments. Therefore, I would like to invite Eddie to turn on the mic, Miroert Mahmutova and Nurgul Janaeva, who are representing Civicus. Miroert Mahmutova is representing think tank environment of Kazakhstan, and Nurgul from city I4C. Could you please turn on your videos? Okay, excellent. And I would like to invite you for the discussion as the launch of this discussion for the other participants. Please share your either recommendation or your impression of this project. Who would like to start? Spots are already taken. Yeah, you know, I really like very much this way of moderating our discussion. Distinguished participants, thank you very much for joining this discussion. But Sugar made an excellent presentation on the think tank that is going to be managed, which will be controlled and which will be moderated by the civil society. It's rather difficult to express in Russian what the think tank is. It's a kind of analytical center for civil society. And I think that there are several issues that are very of paramount importance and that are very useful. And if you take a look at the chats, you will see that they really comply to the needs. Madina Ibrasheva is writing that it will be necessary to take a look at how the civic sector can help the government in sustainable goals development. And therefore, it is very important that the civil sector will set up a very favorable environment, and therefore this center is going to be dealing with it. Or, for example, innovation. And I would like to say that I was really very much attracted by this big initiative, since the civil society, by being involved into it, will be enhanced, because the concept and the question is who is the ownership? The civil society, the people are the owners, just like any local government. Even more important than the local government, and therefore we would like to take a look at how this ownership function that may control, that can influence the decision-making process, and that may represent and present its ideas is really very important. Therefore, enhancement of the local ownership is one of the most important ideas from my point of view. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, who's going to be the next? I would like to say just a few words to link these two sessions, two discussions, and to add a few words to the previous discussion, because the idea of establishing this civil society think tank, I would like to emphasize that in the countries of our region, it is necessary to use the civil society as the basis. And we've done it. We published the concept of the civil society in 2008 and 2010, and since then there was not any additional research made on this particular topic. And Kazakhstan conducted this evaluation. It was a very big volume of work that we have implemented. And the organization of the civil society, which is transliterated into various values, and the influence of the civil society, as well as the environment, enabling environment, which is enhancing the civil society. Therefore, I believe that the evaluation of the civil society for every country and for the whole region will help us to create the foundation for our discussion. Now, as to the idea of establishing this civil society think tank, as a matter of fact, I do not really perceive the very idea of this particular organization. If it is a legal entity, then what will be the governing law of which country for this organization? Because if it will be registered, then it will have to be compliant with the legislation of a certain country. And therefore, in the countries of our region, I understand that the approach is a little bit different, because there are different approaches that are exercised in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. For example, Afghanistan and Armenia and Azerbaijan and Georgia are also a part of the Central Asian region, and there are 63 already available think tanks in these countries, and there are a lot of various publications in the world registries. For example, NIRA, you see the one which was published in 2005, that was published by a Japanese researcher, and which was published also in different countries of the world. Action Development Asian Development Bank is also publishing its reports on the economic development for every country. Therefore, in every country of the region, there are already available think tanks, which I believe are a part of the civil society. To identify the priorities, I would like to mention two big problems. The first problem is capacity building, which is directly linked to the human resources, technical resources, and financial resources, as well as the influence on policy. And therefore, if it is a political think tank, what's going to be its influence on policy? Therefore, we should be guided by these two aspects, because it's a part of the civil society. And one of the main problems for civil society is the financial sustainability and human capital availability. These are two main problems. Only 14% of the civil society said that we have sufficient number of staff members and funding. For example, in Kazakhstan, the government is increasing the funding, and actually this creates dependence of the civil society on the source of funding. Therefore, according to the evaluation of the World Bank, all the donors have already left Kazakhstan. Therefore, there is another problem associated with this, which can be defined as sustainability of civil society. And therefore, establishment of such organizations that will be mainly focusing on the project activities is fraught with danger that once the project is completed, then there is no room for civil society to exist and to continue its activities. Therefore, Philip, what I wanted to say is that the project type of activity is associated with the problem that as soon as the project is completed, then the platform itself, for example, is registered in the Ukraine. This means that as soon as the hosting is over, is terminated, then the project of the national organizations and the platform itself and the database and the site and the information, everything is going to be lost. Therefore, I believe that before we start thinking about a new institution development, we have to start thinking about the resources of civil society that are already available in all countries of the region. And of course, in every organization, there are its own priorities, but I believe that we have already done two big indexes in Kazakhstan. One of them was launched back in 2005, and the second one was published in 2008, 2010, and there is another project that is a current ongoing project and which is being published on an annual basis. Therefore, I think that we need to understand that the organization of civil society, on the one hand, they would like to participate in the dialogue with the government authorities, but there is a problem of business involvement, because when we are talking about the sources of funding, whether it's going to be a contracted research or participation in the state procurement, or at least business here in Kazakhstan, see itself as a member of the civil society, even though we believe that everything that is beyond the government is qualified as the civil society. Thank you very much, Mirbert. Could you please say it in a nutshell, because unfortunately we are short of time. So very shortly, there are two problems for civil society and for the think tank. It's the capacity, which is covering technical and human resources, and influence on politics. Okay, thank you very much. I see that there are comments from Madina Ibrasheva and Tatiana Sidova. Could you please turn on your videos, and then you will be able to ask questions. Good afternoon. My name is Madina Ibrasheva and I represent Argo. And I tried to write about the areas of research. As a matter of fact, I'm involved, and our organization is involved into the research on SDG 16 plus, which is directly linked to the development and promotion of fair and equal society. And in the framework of this research, I had an opportunity to analyze and to scrutinize the current state process in Kazakhstan and to see how it works abroad and in Central Asia in general. And I would like also to draw your attention that unfortunately right now we cannot be involved adequately into this process, even though the mechanisms have already been established on a high political level. However, the issue of involvement of the civil society has not been scrutinized very actively, and it was not actively discussed. And maybe it is related to the fact that this process in Kazakhstan is only rudimentary, is just at the very beginning. Thank you. And the second issue, the second problem is that there are institutes on the global level because it includes very important areas such as SDGs and the sustainable development itself, the establishment of the sustainable society where there is support on the global level. So this is what I believe do at the initial step. Thank you. Tanya, you had a question. Yes, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for a very interesting initiative and very interesting presentations. I have one clarification. In the presentation, there were mentioned some partners, and you remember that there was a graph or a matrix, the members and the civil society organizations and the hubs. And I wanted to clarify, who are they? Are these the organizations who are participating in various events? Could you please tell us a little bit more about it? And who do you believe will be the customer of all this research? And who's going to fund this research? Because my understanding is that without funds, it will be very difficult to do anything. Thank you.
Victoria, вы присоединились, говорите.
Victoria, I see that you joined us. Please feel free to speak. I think, did anybody entertain the question of Tatiana? Okay, good afternoon. I think that it is a very important. My question is very easy. How can we become the members of this think tank? Because in Uzbekistan, I've been working in NGO for quite a long period of time. And I believe that there are a lot of various ideas that we can offer for implementation. And therefore, when we talk about the advocacy and open data, when I was participating in these projects, I would say that there is a huge difference in different countries of Central Asia, because, for example, in Kazakhstan, you are monitoring the open data available in the government for quite a long period of time. In Uzbekistan, we have started doing the first steps along these lines, is outpacing everybody from the point of view of monitoring the activities of the government authorities. Yes, the level is different, but this is what we need. And I'm participating in the research as a client NGO, but very often I don't see any follow-up steps. This is the reason for which I'm very much interested in to participate in various studies and various research, because I always would like to have an opportunity to express my opinion. Thank you. Could you please tell me who you are referring this question to? I believe that this question, and I don't remember the name of the previous speaker who was making the presentation on the civil society think tank. I believe the question should be referred to him.
So I think I need to respond to the question. So, let me start with the who will be the members and who is the partner. For the members, there is no really a hard line between who can be the members. So members could generally it will be civil society organizations and civil society groups and individual civic activists who want to engage into these activities. Also, there could be members from private sectors or from different kind of organizations who want to also collaboratively respond and engage in this think tank activities. For the partners, we think that, for example, our other speakers said that there are many other think tanks and many other institutions, organizations who are doing the same. So we don't want to duplicate anything. So these organizations could become our partners and to contribute what kind of research is being missed and what we can do together and what they contribute in terms of information exchange and what the think tank, what we can contribute also to their knowledge as well. So we mean by partners, it could be think tanks, different organizations, international organizations, or public and private organizations from 7 countries, as well as from different regions, because same idea of South-led think tank establishment is also coming from different other regions in our network as well. So partners would be those who can contribute to our activities, provide different tools, different knowledges, and also leverage and receive research outputs from us as well. And the second thing about partners is that we want to create innovative solutions, innovations based on the research. So in creating innovations, I think these partners could also play a huge role. For the second question about how to become a member of this, core group or brain of the think tank. So there's actually every group or every brain in each research area. So I think with just expressing an interest and engaging actively, anyone could become a part of this group. So right now we don't have any hard lines or any limitations who can or cannot become a member of it. Thank you.
Nurgul, вы к нам присоединились?
Nurgul, you joined us. I really like the comments and the questions that I really wanted to join you for the second time again, and thank you for this opportunity. I would like to answer the question. First of all, one general comment is that there is a principal difference between the civil society think tank from the research centers and study centers. There are a lot of various names for such analytical centers, but they are not think tanks. And there is a principal difference between them, because those who are going to be their members, they are not representatives of academia. They are not professional scientists. And as Batsugar emphasized in his presentation, he said that it is an action-based research. And you said, and you were actually very much upset that there are a lot of very nice studies and research, but they are never put into practice. Our purpose is very different, because we would like the results of this research to become the field of our advocacy and promotion everywhere. And I would say that in the world, there are not so many think tanks. In Asia, there are only 2 or 3 such think tanks. There are analytical centers which are very much detached from practice. But when we are talking about our think tank, we mean here the influence of the decision taking, the influence on the interaction and a relationship with the government, etc. Therefore, our idea is different, because we would like the activists who are already fighting for implementation of some ideas, we would like to teach them how to work with the data. And potential of the private sector in our region is huge, because a lot of our people. And I would say that the potential of USSR in terms of academic knowledge is still huge. But I would like to know that there is no coordination. There are a lot of NGOs, there are different groups which are collecting data, but we have to unite all these efforts. We have to combine this data, and we would like this to become the advocacy tool, the propaganda tool. And in addition, we would like this potential become visible so that this investigation research will be visible in the world. Well, you were talking about civicus. That's yes, there is national assessment. This is in this research, this study is conducted abroad, but we would like to do it here. Enabling Environment Index is a very impressive tool. However, it is not covering what we need for the sake of advocacy now. Even though this instrument by itself is really great, it's fantastic. And this is the reason for which jointly with the participants, we would like to produce a product, to make a product that will be very useful in our practical work, and that will help us, will unite us. And moreover, our recommendations should become the part of the recommendations on various levels, on regional, on national level, on European level, on international level, because we would like to become visible. We would like our voice be heard. So this is very, very briefly what I wanted to say. Sorry that's sorry for being so talkative. No problem, because we also have Sergey joining us. Yes. Well, do you have any link to this portal, or after our meeting, how shall I be able to join you? You know, we will have webinars, we will have an info uh, uh, chain, and I believe that Argo probably will tell you a little bit more in detail about it. And I'm really very happy to hear that from Uzbekistan there are fantastic colleagues who are ready to join us. Sergey, now the floor is yours. Good afternoon. I represent Uсть-Каменогорsk from East Kazakhstan, and I'm working in the area of sociology. In our region, we very often conduct various surveys, and one of the biggest problems from my point of view is that the organizations which are very closely linked to the government authorities and the NGOs, is that the information on the studies or on the conducted research is very rarely published or distributed. And I believe that probably one of the main purposes of this think tank, civil society think tank, should be openness and publishing of data. And right now, I think that for people, for ordinary people and citizens, it is very important to realize that their opinion is taken into consideration. Right now, it's not the case, because if you take Kazakhstan, and if you take probably other countries of Central Asian region, their societies are even more close. From my point of view, I believe that it will only enhance the interest of the people, those people who would like to participate in various public opinion polls, or in the focus groups, or in other research. And therefore, I think that we have probably to focus our attention on the publication of the results of the research, and the distribution of and promotion, advocacy of this type of activity, making sure that we are ready to provide recommendations on different levels, and we are taking into consideration the opinions of the people rather than pursuing any political ideas. Let's put it this way. And Philip, you also asked the question about the topics that could be of interest for the people from my point of view. I mean, for research, what topics will be of interest for the research? I think that now the urbanization process in Kazakhstan is growing stronger year by year. Therefore, the issue of urban development, I mean, adequate urban development and development of comfortable urban environment is very important for ordinary common people. What is important for them, what is right, what is wrong, because even now, if you take our city of Uсть-Каменогорск, the projects very often are not even put in place, and there are not any designs, there are not any plans for construction of new roads or for renovation of the existing roads or construction of something. This is the reason for which people are protesting against these projects. Therefore, I believe that urban development aspects will be of one of the interesting topics of research. Thank you very much, Sergey. I think that for tomorrow, we will take into consideration all these recommendations in terms of the communication on how we should present these results very actively so that they will not be shelved for many years unknown for the people. And as a matter of fact, it's self-governance and the discussion that we were actually facing and that we were discussing. And we also had a question about the customer, who's going to be the customer of advocacy. And there was a question of Nurgul. Nurgul, do you have an opportunity to get connected to join us one more time to answer this question? Now, the question is very interesting, of course. Thank you very much, Tatiana. And in this case, Argo and Innovation for Change have developed a strategic plan, which includes the research of several issues, of several topics. Therefore, when we will establish our civil society think tank, those who are going to pay for the projects, I understand that it will be the civil sector, but theoretically in the future, I believe that this issue is not yet analyzed. And therefore, the question of funding various research activities will have to be identified. And if you have any proposals or if you have any opinions on this, please kindly share them with us. But I believe that the funding potential is really huge for this type of research because they're usually called, in Russian it's very difficult, they're called usually action-oriented research. That is to say, the research is mainly focusing on actions, and when the impact will be seen, the impact of the recommendations. For example, Sergey was talking about urbanization programs, for example, when inclusivity principle is not taken into consideration, when there are innovation or construction projects implemented. And EBRD, World Bank are implementing a lot of such projects, but they are not taking into considerations the intentions or the recommendations of the civil society. When, for example, some factors of our life has changed, but they were not taken into consideration. And I believe that the civil sector can play a very significant role in implementation of urbanization projects by studying, for example, the aftermath effect of decision taking when some aspects were not taken into consideration or taken out or missed out. In this case, I believe that we will be able to find a lot of donors who will be willing to participate in our research. Therefore, the question is much broader. What would we like to do? This is it for me. Thank you very much, Nurgul. And the question of what to do is probably one of the most important questions of our organization. Well, we will still have 2 more days ahead of us, and we are going to narrow the range of our discussion, and tomorrow we will mainly be dealing with some topical issues and how to promote these ideas and how to administer all these issues, and we will be discussing the ownership problem, so that the ownership will belong to the civil society, and all the groups will find their option for ownership. And in one day, we will be mainly discussing various organizational issues, and by doing so, the co-design process will probably be enriched, because this process is in progress for the last 4 or 5 months already. And how the research along these lines will be conducted will be the subject of our very active discussion. With this, I would like to wind up our discussion, because we have already exhausted our timelines, and I would like again to invite Jamila for the final statement. Thank you very much, Philippe. I would like to thank all the participants of our work group on the development of think tank in Central Asia, and I would like to thank all our participants who were involved into this discussion. From my point of view, this discussion was very lively, but it's only the beginning of the development of civil society think tank in Central Asia, and at the same time, Innovation for Change team, as I have already mentioned before, is on a global level with regions of the world, including Africa, East Asia, Southeast Asia, Southern Asia, Eurasian continent. And this is the reason for which we believe our panel discussions and our webinars will be very actively visited, and there will be a lot of very active participants our events. Therefore, I would like to thank all participants of our panel discussion. I'm going to send the letters to you with the help of which you will be able to provide your feedback. So thank you very much for your very active participation. Argo and Innovation for Change in Central Asia is grateful to you, and all the best to you in the development of civil society. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all colleagues. Good luck, and thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. See you again.